everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast, brought to you by Green Gene Foundation.
We're your hosts, Kris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Thanks, Tara. And today we have a very important person working in a very important area. We have with us today Mr. Scott Thompson, who is the owner of Tree Defender, which is becoming a very hot, interesting topic as far as Florida citrus growth. So we're going to be talking about his product and business and how that fits into agriculture.
Hello, thanks for having me. Glad to be here with you. I'm Scott Thompson. My company is Tree Defender, one of them, and Radical Ag Tech. I formed that company back over a decade ago with my partner, Tommy Thayer. Both of us have a pretty long lineage in Florida as Florida natives, especially in agribusiness. So we both go back quite a while. It's been a passion of ours, so we continue to follow that path.
So how did you get started? Tell me more about yourself and how you got started in farming and then where it progressed into the Tree Defender.
So, my father and I were partners. I guess that's where I started my working career. He was an innovative guy, and so that was a passion we both shared. And after he passed, back in the 90s, I moved on and formed my own company. But it always seems to kind of come back to agriculture. I've always enjoyed it. It is steeped in my family's history, and so it always kind of holds a close place in our heart. So,
can you fill the listeners in to what the problem is, especially in the citrus industry that Tree Defender is trying to solve?
The citrus growers as a community have always been very resilient and always faced an uphill battle at times, whether it's the environment or economic conditions or pest or what have you. But they've always been able to fight through it. This HLB or citrus greening has been a totally different animal. The industry as a whole has never faced anything quite, this detrimental. Tommy Thayer and I had gone back a long time, and we kind of were focused on this citrus greening. We knew that the industry was not going to survive it at its current path. The tree attrition rate was far exceeding the replanting rate. Then you started seeing the infrastructure dwindle away and suffer. And so that's kind of where we knew we had to do something. That was our primary focus when we formed the company. We both had a passion for innovation, so we knew that was a good place to start.
So the Tree Defender, it's a type of bag that you put over smaller trees, or how does that work?
Well, that's where it starts. It is a combination of design and materials to prevent citrus greening. When we plant a young citrus tree, typically it's 3 to 4 years before you see a really significant commercial crop. When we were planting these young groves, at the end of the first year, you were almost 100% infected at that point. Came into play with the Tree Defender IPC, or individual protective cover, is we were just trying to protect that tree for the first couple of years. Those trees that were protected would come into production greening free or disease free.
Can you tell the listeners why pesticides aren't solving this problem?
The thought was we would just spray our way out of it with conventional pesticides. The pest itself, the Asian citrus psyllid that transmits the bacteria, it started building up a resistance to the sprays. But what was kind of different was that our beneficial pests that typically fight against that psyllid were not building up that same resistance. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. We were spraying and spraying and spraying more to try to overcome that psyllid resistance and just doing more damage to the beneficial insects. It just kept exacerbating the problem and getting worse and worse.
Can you explain to me how the Tree Defender works?
Absolutely. We manufacture our own mesh, our own materials to be able to keep a sustained level of quality. And it is important. All those little details do add up. This is HDPE, which it looks white, but it's actually translucent. The light passes through those little filaments and it acts like a prism and kind of bounces that light all through the plant. But this mesh is weaved at a certain size that was mandated by the state as psyllid preventative. It would keep a citrus psyllid out. It still allows proper ventilation, still allow water. You can still spray through it. It just prevents the psyllid from getting to the tree. University of Florida was very instrumental in helping us validate a lot of this technology. Dr. Jim Graham was probably the first one that really started working with us on it. And he took these Tree Defenders over to the experiment station, and we put them in a psyllid chamber and packed full of psyllids and left the bottom open for a week, and no psyllids gravitated up underneath to that tree.
Is it only for the citrus greening? I mean, what other benefits does it have to the small trees?
When we first started, we were just trying to protect these young trees for a couple of years until we could figure out another solution. Covering these trees, we thought we would get some hindered growth or retardation in growth, but we were willing to make that trade-off if we could get it to its productive age, greening free. What we saw very quickly was that the trees just really exploded inside these covers. which was totally opposite of what we expected. So after we saw that, we did a field trial, and just in the first 90 days, we saw a 37% increase in growth inside those covers versus the control trees, just in the first 90 days. That really set us on a whole nother path of discovery. That was at the time we just started working with Dr. Graham, and he introduced us to Dr. Zekri's team, Dr. Fernando Alvarez and his team. Now, fast forward, we're seeing 2.5 times growth inside these covers versus controlled trees. And Dr. Alvarez and his team were very instrumental in helping us really flesh this out and understand what was happening here. Is that we were creating a very unique growing environment in there, and it was enhancing the photosynthetic process of that tree. Then we started looking at what was happening on other fruits and vegetables. So we just started putting everything in there. Everything we put in these covers just seemed to thrive. So now we're into all kind of different vegetables, fruits, medicinal plants. It's just been really crazy on the path it's taken us.
How about the freezing cold we just had? Are you expecting that the Tree Defender trees will have a better chance surviving the ice cold that we just went through? I would imagine keep some of the frost off.
We're still gathering data. It's very, very positive so far. When the frost starts forming on the Tree Defender, it starts plugging those little holes in the mesh, and it creates somewhat like an igloo. By placing the irrigation jet, just about any groundwater coming out of the southeastern United States ranges between 68 to 70 degrees. Doesn't matter what your outside temperature is. That temperature is always a constant. So you can imagine this bubble, and you're applying 68 to 70 degree water inside there. It just creates like a warm house. The grove would be iced over in some of the younger trees. And in those tree defenders, there'd be no ice. It was just generating that much heat. Our data has just started coming back in from South Florida Station, and they saw a 5-degree difference inside these covers versus the outside. That is significant. Usually your hope is to get a 2 to 3 degree bump to keep it out of that danger zone. Overall, I'm seeing trees that were protected by these tree defenders are coming back very nicely and not near the damage that we expected.
So with the Tree Defender, it's keeping off pests. Does that make it to where you have to use less pesticides? Yeah. That's got to be a benefit to the ground, right? And to society as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. What we've been able to do with Tree Defender and my test plot, I don't use any pesticides whatsoever. And I can sit and tell you success story after success story where I've been able to successfully grow these fruits and vegetables without any pesticides whatsoever. For the commercial grower, that's not always possible,
right,
or practical, but we have been able to significantly reduce the amount of pesticides that we use on citrus alone. We had one trial when we first started. The gentleman had one block of mandarins. It was a 10-acre block. Half the block we protected them with Tree Defenders, and he took the other half and left them exposed. The unexposed, he sprayed every 3 weeks with a pesticide. The ones we covered with Tree Defenders, he only sprayed 3 times that whole year. So once every 4 months versus once every 3 weeks. That's a pretty significant difference. Mm-hmm. The ones that were covered with the Tree Defender outgrew the uncovered ones by 200%. I mean, we had twice the growth. It was like a 37% mortality rate, other 5 acres. Wow. That were uncovered. Our growers are using Tree Defenders. That's kind of where they've gravitated back to, as they spray 2 or 3 times a year just as a maintenance spray. There are pests that we have learned we still have to watch out for, but those maintenance sprays are usually typically enough to keep them in good shape. That just impacts a whole lot of things. I mean, we could sit and talk forever about the impact on the groundwater, the beneficial insects, just everything as a whole.
Well, when we're talking about this, and I'm sure your major trees that you're protecting are the citrus trees, but when you talked about covering vegetables and fruits and what have you, that excites me for the backyard gardener, for the people that have small crops. Like me, I'm just starting out. I'm just learning. Tell me a little bit more about how that helps your average Joe that's trying to grow some food in his own home.
And that's what's really got us excited. What we're doing on a cellular level in these plants and trees is that we're ramping up that photosynthetic process. So it's pulling in more CO2, creating more plant sugars. We found that plant sugars, the phytonutrients, the chlorophyll, the coloring, anthocyanins, the sugar, all these things were elevated in these plants and trees, and it followed into the fruits and vegetables. All the good stuff in that tree are elevated. That's what really has us excited about food security and the backyard home gardener, is that their ability to grow these fruits and vegetables at home and increase that nutrient density without inputs. We're not adding extra fertilizers or sprays or hormones. All we're doing is creating an environment for that plant to do what it was designed to do in the beginning. We just started a trial 3 weeks ago on sweet onions. Some are covered in a Tree Defender, some are in control. Everything's the same, just one covered. Haven't fertilized them. All they've gotten is water, and that's it. I just went out and took a measurement yesterday. The onions that are in the Tree Defender are anywhere at a minimum of 8 to 12 inches. Some of them a little higher, but 8 to 12 inches is the average. The control are still 6 to 8 inches. The tallest one I could find was 8 inches in that control. So that's a pretty significant difference when you think about it just in 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing these trees and plants come into production a lot faster and stay in production longer. Typically, the citrus trees are 3 to 4 years before we see a viable commercial crop. We've been able to back that up almost a year. Amplified growth inside Tree Defenders, we're now getting those commercial crops at 2.5 to 3.5 years, which is significant alone. I've tested tomatoes and we field try those in a hot summer environment. The tomatoes, after a while, when you start getting into midsummer, the pressure from the whitefly and the heat just finally did the tomatoes in. The ones inside the Tree Defender just continued to produce and produce and produce almost 4 weeks after the other ones had perished. So you start looking at all that and start adding that up for the backyard grower and the commercial growers as well. You're growing not only healthier fruits and vegetables, but you're growing them faster and you're growing them longer without all these chemical inputs and fertilizer inputs that typically you have. We're getting ready to release some new products here next month that I think are going to excite a lot of people and open up a lot of avenues for that.
Interesting. Obviously you said it kind of creates a nice environment inside the bag, but does it also kind of supercharging the light to photosynthesize?
I guess I can go ahead and probably talk a little bit about that. That's a new product we're just going to be releasing here next month, are different color IPCs. Different colors affect plants in different ways. Red will ramp up photosynthesis and flowering and fruiting and that whole process. So the amplification we've seen with just placing them under this mesh, we're seeing another amplification by converting to specific color and color combinations. There's just still so much to unpack here that we're learning.
It'll be interesting to have a follow-up in a year or two, see how all your experiments have gone. But that's neat. I mean, now you're giving these trees prescribed light that helps them better and getting rid of all the stuff that isn't helping them. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
So right now in the market, is it mostly the Tree Defender on the small ones till they get to a certain age where they can fight off the pest on themselves?
Up to this point, most of the commercial citrus growers were using what we call our 6-foot cover, which was designed to stay on that tree for the first couple of years. By that time, it's hitting its productive state. And so they pull it off and let it go. The larger ones, the 8, 10, and 12s, still answer a lot of questions there. I had a lot of questions, were they going to fruit inside the covers, how they were going to do long term. You just have to study it over time because you can't foresee everything.
Right.
But the longer we work with this, a significant portion of our growers have converted to the larger covers just because now we see what every year you keep inside, you step it up, it just amplifies all these things. And the fruit quality we're seeing out of these covers is just tremendous. We had a blackberry trial that we did about 1.5 years, 2 years ago on a commercial blackberry grower. And I asked him to try some of these. All I was trying to do to see if I could grow a blackberry inside of a Tree Defender. That's all we were trying to do. Conventional thinking, you always thought a blackberry has to have a pollinator in order to fruit. I figured if I could grow a couple of berries, I could pursue and keep going with it. It really blew us away what happened. The blackberry plants inside the Tree Defender outgrew the uncovered ones significantly. What was very shocking is that the uncovered plants fruited typically a few times like they normally would and then shut down and quit fruiting. The ones inside the Tree Defender continued to fruit and fruit and fruit and fruit long after the other ones had shut down. I still don't have all the answers to that. I just know it was really surprising. When we did the fruit quality test on those blackberries, the uncovered had a Brix, which is the soluble sugars in that fruit, of a 6 to 7 degree or 6 or 7% Brix in that tree. The covered ones had a 12 to 13. So almost double the Brix in those covered blackberries. It's just amazing what we're seeing happening to some of these plants and trees. So of course now we're gravitating up to the larger covers. We have trials on papayas down in Tobago, Caribbean islands. We have coffee trials going on, just all kind of different things here across the board of seeing what what happens when we grow inside these protected environments.
Cool. Exciting stuff. Would you like to leave the team with a little bit of last words?
Well, keep an eye on us. We have other companies that we're involved. I know we mentioned Radical Ag Tech. That's a sister company of ours. Some really cool stuff that I'll be able to talk a little more about it in the coming months. God seemed to have laid some really big opportunities in our lap. And so we're trying to be good stewards and make it all happen. But we've got some really cool stuff going on that I think could have a very big impact on society as a whole if we continue on. There's a lot to discover out there, and we're enjoying what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, there's some very interesting topics and technologies at play there. And that's about all the time we have for the podcast today.
So thanks for listening to Modern Farming, and be sure to follow us and join us again as we grow in the knowledge about the world that feeds us.